Hi, Deborah. Glad to see you or your name. And hello, Sandy. Good afternoon, everyone, and happy September. Welcome to our weekly webinar. So happy to have you all here for what's going to be a fun conversation. I'll introduce our guests in just a moment, but as always, a few housekeeping tips. Looks like everybody is muted. Thank you very much. You are welcome to use the chat if you have questions or comments while we talk today. And we are recording, so we will have this posted on our YouTube channel so that you can watch again and or share with family and friends that might find it helpful. If you need closed captioning, feel free to use the show captions button at the bottom of your screen. And as always, we are so happy to have you here. I know I'm grateful for the cooler weather that's coming, excited about that's here actually. Excited about the Chiefs tonight, and also excited that we have another showing of our movie Why tonight in Pittsburgh. I think it starts at about 6 o'clock, and it's on the campus at Pittsburgh State University. Tomorrow night, we will be showing Why in Wichita at the KU School of Medicine campus. And if you were hedging your bets on whether you should go, I'll tell you that I'll be there, so I can help you decide whether you want to go. You should go anyway, because of course it's a lovely movie about early detection of Alzheimer's disease. So that's tomorrow in Wichita at 5 o'clock at the School of Medicine, and all of the information is in our My Alliance newsletter. So we look forward to having a good crowd at both of those showings tonight and tomorrow. But before then, we have my dear friends, Deborah Shouse and Ron Zoglin. And Deborah and Ron, I was thinking, doing a little calendaring and a little number crunching, and I think I've known you all for about 20 years, which is just incredible to me. I first met Ron and Deborah when I was an employee at the Alzheimer's Association, and that was in 2001. So it's been my great honor to know you and to follow your journey. And when I knew that I was going to be part of the KU ADRC and hosting this webinar, your names came to mind immediately as people I had to get on the list for speakers. I'm so glad that it worked out that you all could be with us today. So for the audience, here's some things I want you to know about Ron and Deborah. They are dementia advocates. They are authors and presenters. They do laughter yoga. They have been caregivers for their beloved family members. I think it's probably accurate to say that their mission is to find creativity and hope as they walk along the journey of dementia. They have performed around the world. In fact, I think this is probably okay for me to say, I probably would have gotten them to come on sooner, except they are always going off on adventures. And so I had to make sure their calendar and the weekly webinar calendar matched up. And they have gone to some splendid places around the world for fun, I think, and also for education and for helping people to understand what dementia looks like and the tools they can use. So Ron is a storyteller. He's been the voice on some audio recordings of books. Deborah has, in her words, an MBA, but she only uses it in emergencies, which I think is just fantastic. She is also an author. If you have read any of the chicken soup books, you may have seen Deborah's writing in some of those soup books that give guidance and humor and love for all kinds of people. Deborah has also written a book called Love in the Land of Dementia, Connecting in the Land of Dementia. And her latest book, I think, is An Old Woman Walks into a Bar. And it talks about aging with grace and purpose. So I think you can hear from all of that they are really quite lovely folks. And I'm looking forward to talking with them today on our webinar. So what we're going to do is have a conversation that you all get to eavesdrop on. And feel free to ask questions if there's something specific that you'd like to know about. You can use the chat, and I'll do some double duty, and maybe Tina, you can help watch the chat also. And we'll get started. So welcome, Deborah and Ron. I'm so glad to see you all. And the first question I want to kick us off with is that you both have often described the work that you do, I think the mission that you do, as dementia friendly, making the world a dementia friendly place. Can you tell us more about what dementia friendly looks like?
Yes, I will start us off. That word takes us back to when you were at the Alzheimer's Association, and so was Michelle Needens, your colleague, and they had an educational program on how to be more dementia friendly. And at the end of that program, Michelle gave a stirring speech, and she looked out into the audience and she said, "What are you going to do to make Kansas City more dementia friendly?" And I was pretty sure she was pointing at me. So I really started thinking about it. And it took me about a year to think of one thing I thought that Ron and I could try to do, because I thought about my parents and how they loved to go to movies, and how my father, not wanting to waste money, stopped going to movies when my mom couldn't sit still through them. And so I thought, wouldn't it be great to have a dementia-friendly movie program? And Ron and I reached out to the Kansas City Public Library, and a great partnership was formed then. And so that started that part of the journey, that feeling of wanting to be inclusive with people of all abilities, but our special loves, people who are living with cognitive impairments.
Love it. So how do you know then that a place is dementia friendly? I could say unfriendly, but let's keep it strengths-based here. How do you know if a place is dementia friendly for our loved ones?
Ron, do you want to say a few of the things we thought about as we tried to figure out a movie place that would be good for people?
Oh, make sure you unmute yourself, Ron. We can't read lips, or we could, but it'll be easier if we can just hear you.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Yeah, okay. I'll let Deborah go ahead and get started, and I'll just chime in from time to time. She's our number one spokesman on this.
All right. Well, one of the things, just part of this was, and you all have witnessed it probably, like I took my mom to the movies when she was living with dementia, and she got up in the middle and like hurried down the dark aisle, and I stumbled after her, and that was kind of a scary moment. So I wanted a place where we could see at all times. I wanted lights, not disturbing the movie, but light enough so we could all walk. We wanted a place where people didn't have to be silent, could chat, make noise if they wanted. We wanted a place where it was very accessible, easy to park. And we started analyzing all our theaters. Finally, the Plaza Library came to mind because they have that wonderful Truman Forum in the basement, which is very accessible. They have an elevator, they have parking. And we wanted to have treats, and we wanted it to be just a really, lovely outing. We wanted movies that were nonviolent, that were short enough. So those were some of the things that came into play with that part of it. We also did a memory cafe with them. And part of that was inviting arts and cultural organizations in Kansas City to contribute to that. So we had the zoo, we had the symphony, we had the ballet, we had the Nelson Atkins. They all gave programs. And as part of that, several of those organizations became more inclusive, and they even had a dementia-friendly showing of the Nutcracker, the symphony and the ballet, and their partnership. So just a way of having us all feel welcomed.
And we've got a YouTube channel which documents almost all of these. So you can easily go there and get a taste, 5 minutes at a time, of each one of the different gatherings that we did. And those could be very useful for anyone who wants to start that kind of program in their own community.
I love that, Ron, but also in their own home, so it's something, we can do it home because we know our beloveds so well, and also invite other people to have it, be even more festive.
Perfect. Deborah and Ron, there's a question from Renee in the chat about whether the movies at the library are still happening.
Right now, they are not. The pandemic pretty much stopped everything. And by the time it was over, all our library advocates had moved on to other things. So it hasn't been the right time to start again. But I hope that they will start again, because they were wonderful partners, Mid-American Regional Council, KU, the Alzheimer's Association. We had just really fabulous partners, and it's great, to work with other people to help make this happen.
Now, one good thing that did happen during the COVID days, we had the opportunity to have free time and attention. And early on, with Michelle's fabulous help, we ended up having the opportunity to meet with the new airport personnel as they were building the airport. And they had a desire to create the most inclusive airport in the country. And as we brought in the concept of dementia, they thought that's a good idea. And from there, we have created what we think. If anyone can prove us wrong, I'd love to hear about it, because I'd like to see it. But we think it's the most dementia-friendly airport in the United States.
Wonderful. I've certainly read a lot of kudos for the new airport in Kansas City. I'm someone who thought the old airport was so lovely and convenient and easy, but definitely room for improvement in terms of dementia friendliness. So when I heard that you and Deborah, Ron, were part of the conversation on making that airport work better for not just people with dementia, but for all of us, then I knew it would be okay. And I have had a chance to fly out of and back home to the Kansas City airport, and was definitely taking note of what's different and what I think might work well for folks with cognitive change.
One particularly wonderful thing, I don't know if you've had a chance to see the simulator room yet. Have you noticed that?
Yes, I have seen that. Can you talk about that with us, Ron? Tell us about how it works.
It's an opportunity to go early, to have people with dementia experience what it's like to get on a plane. And so they do not feel totally confounded when hours or a day or two later they enter a plane, and you literally go through the motion. Deborah, what else would you have to say about that?
Well, one of the things they put in there, this was Ron's idea, was one of those squishy little bathrooms that is always, confusing. So you could, practice getting in and out of the bathroom. They have the sounds of flying in there. They have the seats, they have the seat belts, and it's from, they rescued an old airplane. So they're justifiably very proud of that. The thing that helped us so much, because besides all our experts on our team, were people who were living with dementia, who were traveling quite a bit. And there's still another component to that has yet to emerge, which is training the staff to be alert. I'm hoping we're going to use the sunflower emblem, which is a sign of an invisible disability. It's being used all over the world now, and I hope we're going to be part of that. But what was interesting is how welcoming the airport planners were, and how nobody had thought of people who were living with dementia when they decided to be the most inclusive airport ever. So we're so glad that they just love the idea, and that our airport is, it's still a busy airport, but it's got some amenities and some comforts that we didn't have before.
Absolutely. And I think so many of us, probably not maybe most of the people on the webinar, but people who have not yet found out about the KU-ADRC, think of Alzheimer's disease or dementia as just memory loss, just being forgetful. and of course you all know over your years of being family caregivers and professional experts, know that of course when someone has dementia, it is about far more than just not being able to remember. And a lot of your writing, Deborah, I know in the Chicken Soup books and in Love in the Land of Dementia, really addresses for people all of the different things that arise as part of this diagnosis. So I want to ask you, please, to tell our audience about, as someone who has been a family caregiver and as someone who writes professionally about dementia, what advice would you give to the caregivers who are on the webinar today for how to walk through the land of dementia on a journey they might not have chosen?
Well, my favorite piece of advice is to take care of yourselves. It's also the hardest piece of advice, but that was the hardest thing for me to learn when my mom was going through dementia. What I started doing is I made a list. I like to make lists, and I made a list of 5-minute things that renewed me and cheered me up. So there was dark chocolate on the list. There was phone a friend on the list. There was stand outside, take a quick walk. There was read a book, a page in a book. Little tiny things that kept me renewed so that I could be there properly for my mom. And the other thing, and I think all caregivers do this so remarkably, is adaptability. And I was particularly thinking about that when I wrote the book Connecting in the Land of Dementia. And that is a book where I interviewed 70 experts who worked with people living with dementia through creativity and the arts and imagination. And I had a fabulous time writing that book. And I also, both Ron and I, wished we'd talked to all those people while we were still caring for our parents, because they gave us so many different tips. But I particularly love the tips where people work on adapting hobbies, favorite activities to go as far as they can go. A couple friends of ours gave us a great example because they are bird watchers. And when it came where they could no longer get up early, go tramping in the forest with a group of people, they rearranged their living room furniture so they could see out the front window. They put bird feeders outside. They got their bird book, their binoculars, their thermos of hot coffee, and they bird watched at home. And I love that kind of creativity. And there's so many examples of that you all, I know, each have one or two or three of how you really help the person keep up his or her interest in different ways, like we all have to do as we all change.
Absolutely.
And the nice thing about connecting in the Land of Dementia is you can really open the book to any page and find an activity and a surprise. And it is so great to have that as a resource when you just don't, what can I do next? What am I missing? And I think idea after idea will appear as you flip through it, as opposed to Love in the Land of Dementia, which is a book you will want to read from page 1 all the way through, because it really tells the whole story of Deborah's journey and how she coped with the various issues that showed up as they came along one after another. As we're preaching to the choir, I think everybody who's listening to this has faced.
I think you're right. And I love what you said about surprises. I think any caregiver of someone with a dementia has had their share of surprises. And I love the way you frame it in your books, Deborah, about nice surprises, and whether that's dark chocolate, which I think we do support in our Mediterranean diet program.
Thank you.
And standing outside and bird watching even. Now, for me, the bird watching would be a little terrifying because I am not a fan of birds. So I'd watch cats or dogs or something. But find what's meaningful to your loved one. And you can make an activity out of just about anything.
Yeah.
So another question I have for you both, and I alluded to this earlier, is that Ron and Deborah are great world travelers. And one of the questions that I often get when I present about, what is dementia? What causes it? Where does it come from? Who gets it? A question I've often gotten is, does Alzheimer's look the same no matter where you are in the world? Do other societies, other populations get dementia in the same way that we do in the United States? Of course, the United States is on the leading edge, I think, of doing a lot of research and education. But lots of people in all parts of the world get Alzheimer's. And so I wonder, Ron and Deborah, if you would tell us something fascinating that you might have learned somewhere else about dementia. Is it different? Is it the same? What do we think?
Well, our experiences have been mostly with caregivers in other countries, either family caregivers or medical professionals. And the thing we have loved about sharing stories and ideas is that the journey is very similar for each of us. And that is that there is a love, there is an emotional context, there is a lot of adaptability required. But I often think of, we traveled to Turkey, and we were lucky enough to give a talk in Istanbul with their Alzheimer's Society. And we had a translator, so we shared some stories with them. And after the talk, a gentleman came up and he said to me, "Your story is my story." And that really summed it up for me, how connected we all are. And I think that's the way Ron and I have felt each time we're lucky enough to be in another culture and share experiences, stories with either the professionals who are caring for people or especially friends and family, and see how similar the journey is. Even when, it's mostly family members taking care of people, some cultures don't want to talk about it so much. And I feel really lucky that because I had a desire to write about it, I got to talk about it. And I think that's a really important thing for each of us to get to do, is to talk about our person who we love, who's living with dementia, to share what's going on, to share stories about them with friends and family who are interested. That was a huge boost for me. With my mom particularly, is, when a friend said, "Oh, tell me more about your mom." It's a great question. And I love to answer. And we sometimes can get in sort of a caregiving mood, wanting to make sure people are safe and, all the practical details. But this moved it away. So I was thinking about my mom as the wonderful, interesting person she was, instead of the wonderful, interesting person I needed to make sure was safe. It's a big difference for me.
Yes, I can imagine. Deborah, I got a direct question in the chat from someone who says, along these lines of talking about Alzheimer's around the world, I'm curious about other countries' support systems to address this. And I promise you, I did not tell this person to ask this next question, but it is a really good one. So I'll tell you that it says, "Are we spoiled here with the KUADRC?" That was not a plug, but this person wants to know, do you see equivalent, something as cool, right, as the ADRC in your journeys, in your travels?
Yeah, that question nails one of the big differences that we did discover in many of the countries we went to. The support system in so many places where we have talked and presented and told tales and listened to tales. Here we have, first of all, the support system of people being able to live in homes and facilities, especially designed and equipped. In many, many other countries, that practically doesn't exist. For the most part, people are living with their family and having to deal with that without that extra support. As to something like what KU does, very rare. Deborah, what's your opinion on that?
Well, I agree. I'd say the UK is ahead of us in ways, particularly in making things dementia friendly. But the education and support that you all have, we are so lucky to have that, because so many times people don't even know what's happening with their loved one. And it's really hard to share information. Some people think, oh, we can't talk about it. It's a family secret. So I think Ron really captured it. We are so lucky. We are lucky here, to have you, Kelly, and all the resources. We're lucky to have Zoom and electricity, so we can all gather no matter what. And we're lucky that we're willing to talk and listen and work as a community to try to make everybody as happy and comfortable as possible. So it's a great question.
That is. Thank you so much to the person who asked. And perhaps we will have to look into some KU and UK. How about that? Partnerships. Since they're ahead of us, we've got to catch up, right? And maybe our folks in the UK.
They are also very sharing. So when we started with the airport, they have Heathrow and Gatwick are very dementia-friendly airports, as is an airport in, I think, Brisbane, Australia. And they helped us so much. There's an international dementia air travel group that we joined. They were so excited about helping us. So that's what I love about this community, is we all want to help each other.
Wonderful. Well, my goodness, our time is coming to an end, but I want to say a couple more things. And that is, Leslie just wrote in the chat. She came in late, would love to have your books. Where can I find them? So I dropped the link to your website in the chat, Ron and Deborah, dementiajourney.com. And I think you're on Amazon too. Is that?
Yeah, that's a good way to reach it. And my updated website is deborahshousewrites.com, but you can go to Amazon and get them easily.
Great. I'm going to put that in the chat. Okay. And thank you everybody for being here. Ron and Deborah, you certainly delivered exactly even more than I knew you could. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your travels. And you and I, the three of us, are going to have to get together to talk more about travels. I want to hear about this safari that you've just gone on. So we'll do that separately. I will tell everyone that our speaker for next week is Alexis Del Cid, and you might recognize that name. She was a news reporter, anchor, I believe, on KCTV5, CBS station, several years ago, and then she moved to, I believe, San Antonio, Texas, and then her father was diagnosed with dementia a couple of years ago, and she decided to take a break from her TV reporting duties and move back to Kansas City and take care of her father. And so she is doing that, and is now also on the Medical News Network here at the KU health system, and doing some reporting and some sharing about information. And she has a very active social media presence on her Instagram and her Facebook. She tells wonderful stories about her dad. So she'll be with us next week, and it will be a lot like today's. We are going to have a conversation that you all can listen in on about Alexis's adventures and caring for her father. So we'll have more information about that on our website. Deborah and Ron, I hope you see the chat. People are saying this went by so fast. Can you come back? Would love to hear more. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And as I will be scheduling more of these webinars, you're definitely on the list for sure, forever. So we can certainly arrange for that. And so I think with that, we will wrap us up for the afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. Stay tuned to the My Alliance newsletter for lots of great information. And we'll be back next week with Alexis Del Cid. Have a great afternoon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.